to find. I mean, look, you scored 8 runs. You know, I as much as we've talked about this team leaving guys on base, the irony is they're getting guys on base. But we'll discuss more in just a few and have some sound from Coach Maneri. We've been talking a lot of basketball this week as Lamont Paris begins to, see first the exodus of players, which was expected. Exactly who, we still may find some more out. But you almost figure, Elijah, if you were gonna, you would have. I suppose that's sort of the bit of good news about this. We haven't heard any other names yet, but more kids will be entering the portal. How many enter that are still playing? There's only 16 schools left. Obviously, some of those guys will transfer, but not. I don't know. They're not going to significantly add to the numbers. But there could still be a few more that may be talking to family, friends, others, weighing some options. So we'll see. But we've been getting into a little bit of that on just exactly. And yesterday, we had Derek Scott on, and I know you asked him, what area might be the biggest concern, in the offseason, and without much hesitation, all of it. I mean, depending on, who you're losing from an eligibility perspective, and then the fact that you're losing a minimum of 2 starters off this year's team to the portal that could come back.
Bigger question is what isn't a priority?
Yeah, I mean, everything's going to be, and again, one of the biggest questions is, will Cam Scott stay? I know Cam, after the SEC tournament, said he was going to. And believe me, what I'm getting ready to say isn't about Cam. It's about a story that I shared with Elijah that many of you may remember, only to say people can change their minds. And a lot of us do from time to time, depending on circumstances. But many of you may remember after Steve Spurrier's first season, Sidney Rice had a year of eligibility left. Remember, Sidney had gotten hurt, and he played a year for Coach Holtz's squad, and he played a year for Steve Spurrier's squad. And Steve, was really kind of on Sidney, like, hey, stay and you going, stay and you going. Yeah, I'm going to stay. All right, well, let's have a press conference. Let's get it out there. All right, let's do it. And so they did it. And then a few weeks later, Sidney changed his mind. Again, I'm not saying, so Cam Scott's going to change his mind. He's not coming back. I'm not doing that. But I remember that. I remember that. And you know what? I didn't blame Sidney one bit, because Sidney, had first-round talent. I think ended up going in the second round, had a very good career, made a lot of money, and had really probably done everything he could do for himself, at least in college. And sometimes you just need to strike. And considering he had been through a major injury already, I think that absolutely factored into his decision to go ahead and get paid. So, again, never faulted him for what he did. We'll do that for you. Speaking of football, still some spring football things to discuss. There was a lot that we didn't get to yesterday from coaches Shula and White that we'll continue to discuss. Jack Veltry's going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, so we'll get some baseball from Jack and a little bit of spring football, too. Speaking of football, I guess, I don't know, Elijah. Russell Wilson's going to the Giants. So this is sort of now Justin Fields to the Jets, right? And Russell Wilson to the Giants. God help both of you. But now the Steelers they have Mason Rudolph again. So all of a sudden it feels like the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be in the market for a quarterback. But you also got to think that they won't have the luxury without a significant trade of being able to take Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Jackson Dart is beginning to move up the ranks. And I even heard someone today suggest, wait for it, Jalen Milroe to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who probably would be available in their first-round slot, sort of middle of the first round.
Like Jalen Milroe in the first round.
you could probably wait, right?
You could definitely wait to get him in the second round. I'm sure everybody else watched the same thing we watched this year.
Yeah, I think there's promise there, but it's going to take a while to come out.
Well, I mean, he's already, 21, 22 years old?
Yeah.
I mean, it would take a lot of promise.
Well, again, Sam Darnold had a good year last year, and he got paid, finally. And
He
old.
did.
He's old.
The rookie contract is
He's old-ish.
The rookie contract for a team like the Steelers is going to be really important to be able to hit on right now.
So we'll get into some of those things for you throughout the day. It's opening. Well, okay. Does baseball shoot itself in the foot by what it did with the Dodgers and Cubs last week?
Well,
and trying to call tomorrow opening day?
Well, they're going to call it opening day regardless.
But it's a lie. I mean, isn't it?
Well, it's not if you believe it. Messaging here is very important.
Thank you, George Costanza.
They're going to believe it.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
And and you will know they believe it because they will paste it on every single imaging or piece of imaging that goes on in all the games that happen tomorrow.
Do you know who the Atlanta Braves are playing? I do. I'm just asking. Well, here's the thing.
Pulled up.
Well, no, it's okay. The Atlanta Braves. I'll just say
the Padres. That's right.
The Braves have 4 in San Diego, followed by 3 in Los Angeles.
Kicking off the West Coast road trip early.
I mean,
getting that out of the way.
Or
one of them.
I like to think they could go 4 and 3. I just don't want them to do any worse than 3 and 4. I don't know how good San Diego really is. I know how good the Dodgers are because I know what the Dodgers did last year. The Dodgers did everything that you want to do in a baseball season.
I was reading the Athletics piece where Jim Bowden was ranking like all 30 teams in their starting rotations. And obviously the Dodgers were number 1. And I thought it was hilarious how he worded it. He's like, if you think about it, the Dodgers at their healthiest have 5 aces.
Yeah.
Like, that's dumb.
Yeah. Well, but
that's scary.
They've got the money. They've admitted to building into their budget the luxury tax penalty.
The professional league in Japan has basically become their quadruple A team.
Yeah. Hey, the system allows it. And
hey, they want to play there. They're the ones signing.
Yeah, and you're not going to see a salary cap come to Major League Baseball.
Not without a lockout.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, the owners want one. The players would never. Players would never vote in a CBA unless the cap was just so big that the players felt certain that they would all be getting, paid what they're making and have room for significant cost of living adjustments, I might say. Because it's hard to be a Major League Baseball player when you make that much money.
More money than you know what to do.
But then we talked yesterday about the NBA salary cap going up. And then we talked about, like, people you've never heard of that make $18 million a year. And the dudes that aren't all-stars that are getting ready to make $60 million a year. And then I asked Elijah, how old is the first $100 million a season NBA player? Thinking Elijah was going to tell me, 8, 10. And he's like, Victor Wembanyama. And I was like, oh. And then Elijah sold me on the fact that in like 7 years, when he's not even 30, that'll be about where it is, man.
He's on his rookie deal right now. You want to know what he's scheduled to make when he becomes a restricted free agent, like the year before he becomes a restricted free agent?
Well, again, if Fred VanVleet is making 63 next season, it's got to be in that ballpark, yeah?
Mind you, this is a rookie deal. This is his rookie contract, 42.2.
Okay. So he'll be doubling his pay.
And the Supermax right now, I want to believe, is probably in the 75 some odd.
As we speak.
And then when that goes up, if it goes up 10%, we're going to get a lot closer to that. And I think it's going to go up even more in like 5 or 6 years.
I was born in the wrong body.
I was born about a foot too short.
Yeah. That's about right. But hey, radio's fun.
It is fun. I'm just not going to make $100 million a year to play basketball.
So we got those things for you. We're back to the Sweet 16 tomorrow on the men's side of things. Friday, Gamecocks will take on Maryland in women's basketball. That game is scheduled to tip around 5 o'clock. It's 30 minutes after the North Carolina Duke game. Should be a lot of fun. Elijah will be making his way over, so looking forward to that. David Cloninger is going to join us tomorrow from Birmingham as well. He was on his way over there today. In fact, I'll save it until tomorrow when David visits with us. But David is taking time to do something very cool today.
Very jealous.
Yeah. But I'll save that till tomorrow. I don't want to spoil it. So we'll just let DC tell us what he's doing. Got some other Major League things to get to, but a lot on the Gamecocks. Come back, get into your phone calls, texts, tweets, and get to the poll question, 803-404-6100. In fact, can we go to break with the poll question? I don't want to give results yet. I just want to give the poll question and urge people to chime in.
Yes. So our poll question of the day at 1075 The Game on Twitter, we went ahead and pinned it to the top of the profile so it could be easy finding. What's your level of hope for this Gamecocks baseball team? Long season, still time, concerned, mashing the panic button, or completely checked out?
No.
Those are your options.
Okay. 1075 The Game on the Twitters, or X, if that's what you want to call it. Rick has a question. We'll get to him on the other side, and we'll get some sound from Paul Maneri. But we will talk a lot about this baseball team because not only does it not get any easier this weekend, it technically gets harder this weekend for the Gamecocks. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Welcome back into the Postgame Show on this Wednesday afternoon. Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell with you. Jack Veltri of Gamecock Central joining us coming up in about an hour's time. Get into some baseball and spring football with him. We'll be doing some more of each of those before we talk to Jack. Plus, there's a few things going on in the NFL that Elijah and I want to discuss. Can they have it both ways? We'll explain a little bit later on. Real quick, before we do anything else, let's get on the phone lines. Rick has a question for us today. Rick, good afternoon. How you doing?
Hey, guys, I don't know if y'all remember me, but I was the caller that said I am dumping the Dallas Cowboys. I gave my memorabilia to my nephew.
I do remember, yes, yes.
Okay. Well, my brothers have challenged my man card, and I appreciate y'all's guidance, I guess.
Okay.
And the thing is I did say wherever Myles Garrett goes, I was going to start. That was going to be my team. I didn't say where Myles Garrett stays.
So we're playing semantics now. I like it. Okay.
Hey,
technicality here. Okay.
You know, it's the Cleveland Browns. I got to come up with something.
Yeah.
But what I've done is my brothers, who I have 6 of them, they all challenged my man card and said, you have to be a Cleveland Browns. Well, to my point, I said where he goes. I have adopted the Los Angeles Chargers.
Okay.
And I think I am completely in the bounds of the man card because he didn't go. Myles Garrett didn't go anywhere. He stayed. So I want to get y'all's opinion. I've already bought a Chargers hat.
All right.
And
All right.
I went online and I bought the rookie card of the quarterback. And I just think the Chargers are up and coming. So I want to know what y'all think.
Okay. Wow. All right. Hey, Rick, let me ask you that. You said it's you and you have 5 brothers. So there's 6 of you total?
6 brothers.
Okay, so
7
there's
of us.
7 of you. Wow.
And
Hey.
they're all Cowboy fans.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
first
my
off, let
goodness.
me just say first off that your mother is a saint. So there's
Well,
that.
She's from Dallas.
Okay. Well, nevertheless, she could be from anywhere, but 7 boys, my God. So she's a saint. And
Those grocery bills had to have gone crazy.
Well, the two girls were way harder than any of us.
so she has 9. Your mother has 9 children. She's an even better saint then. All right, where are you in the pecking order? Just out of curiosity, to help me kind of.
My
I
age.
I am 60 years old, and I am the youngest.
Oh, so you're the youngest. Are you the youngest of 9?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, first, I do like the fact that you seemingly have a technicality on your side. You're not wrong when you said wherever he goes, but I also see rather easily the point of no, we're not letting you off on a technicality because he's still in the league.
Yeah, I hate my brothers.
Yeah, well, but since you're the youngest, maybe. I don't know. I imagine they're just going to pick on you about that, regardless of age, aren't they? So,
Because they'd have ragged on you real hard if you became a Cleveland Browns fan.
See, I was born on a tobacco farm. So the way I'm looking at it is I am plowing new ground.
Okay. Yeah. I do wish instead of the AFC West's L.A. Chargers, you had chosen the AFC West's Denver Broncos, because I, too, do think the Chargers are up and coming. But I'm a Broncos fan, so they bother me because Jim Harbaugh's an excellent coach.
You got to live with them.
And good for you to buy the Justin Herbert rookie card. That's pretty cool. I gotta say, Rick, I do believe you could use the language technicality as a defense. But I think if this were to go to the jury, and in this case the jury seems to be your half dozen brothers, I think you're going to lose the case. I do. I think you're going to – I don't think they're going to let you off on said technicality. I think there's going to be more of an understanding that, hey, he didn't go anywhere, but he didn't quit.
Yeah. My biggest question is, did you establish what might happen if Myles Garrett were to be like, wait, you're going to pay me how much? Okay, I'm a Cleveland Brown for life, never in doubt.
Right.
Was that ever established between the six of you?
Well, I did tell one of my brothers, my oldest, who is 78, I did tell him that I'm not going to be a Cleveland Browns fan.
Now, see that
And
right
he
there.
did-
There's
he
your
did
biggest.
fit it.
There's your biggest defense right there.
Yes, because you did
It's
establish it.
in
You
your
established it
favor.
beforehand.
Yeah,
then I think that plays your favor.
Yeah,
as
in
well.
your favor is that you said, "Look, I'm not going to," because I get it. Everybody has to get it.
So do I still have my man card in full effect?
I think you do.
Yeah, that was the only question I needed to know.
I think you do.
I vote in favor.
Yeah. Again, you've got a defense. You established what. I mean, you stood your ground with what you were not going to do. And you also continued to immediately say, but hey, I love the sport. I've picked a team. I have in some way invested in the team by spending money on it, even if it's just for a hat and a card.
The card ain't cheap either.
Yeah, I mean, money's money. But I again, you've got a technicality. They probably won't let you off on that. But establishing what you would not do and standing your ground in that respect leads me to believe that you are in good shape. And you know what? If not, Rick, then just tell them where to shove it, man. And what are they going to do?
Well, I've kind of already done that.
Well, good. All right.
right.
There you go. There you go.
It's perfectly in
Well,
bounds.
you know what? My oldest brother and I think all my other brothers were listening, so they can, you know what? You guys are the professionals, and that's why I called y'all. And
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. One of my great friends is he knows who he is if he's listening. I won't say his name, but I hope he's listening right now. But he is one of this city's more prominent attorneys. And if he is listening, I'll get him to weigh in. If he's not, Rick, then I will have him listen to this rather than me tell it. All right, Elijah will have this up on the podcast page of the YouTube channel. I'll have my good friend listen to this and then determine what he would do. Let's say if he were a judge or something like that, you know.
Hey,
but I think you're in good shape. I think you're in good shape.
On a side note, I have been a cancer patient for about June 11th will be 9 years, and I always counted on hearing Tommy call the games when I was getting my treatments, and you know I miss him, but I will say that even though things don't look great, it is historically proven that teams by Coach Maneri get better as the season goes on. I schedule my treatments based on Carolina baseball.
Okay.
And I think we're going to be okay. And he is just too good of a coach for us to flounder. And I put my earbuds in. I listen to the broadcast because, you know, you can have the early schedule or you can have the late schedule. You could have weekend schedules. And I basically do my treatments based on Carolina baseball, and I still have faith that we will be in the tournament, and everybody needs to just relax, and things are going to be fine.
Yeah. Let me ask you, and I hope you're doing well. And with my wife and my mother having been cancer patients and my grandmother, I know what you're going through, so I'm pulling for you. Let me ask you, would you like to go to Saturday afternoon's Carolina-Tennessee game?
Oh, my goodness. I would love it.
All right.
Yes,
stay on
absolutely.
hold. Elijah's going to get you a pair of tickets, okay?
Oh, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got you a pair of tickets.
Rick, I'll put you on
Elijah,
hold.
yeah, so just stay on hold, Rick, and Elijah will hook you up with a pair of tickets for Saturday afternoon's game. All right. Well, A, get better, and B, don't let I don't care how old anybody is. He's a little brother. Don't push him around.
Yeah.
But I think again, there is a technicality that he has in his favor that could be argued in court, right?
Yes.
Whether you get off on said technicality, I don't know. We hear that a lot, right? Like, well, it's technicality about the law.
And oftentimes technicalities get squeezed by without previous discussion on what would happen if that. That's why I asked,
Right.
because that you won't beat the goalpost moving allegations if you don't establish the expectation beforehand, right? If it was never discussed between them, and then he said, well, Myles Garrett's still a Brown. I'm not going to subject myself to becoming a Cleveland Browns fan, no matter how reasonable that is. You won't beat the goalpost moving allegations. Right. However, if it was previously established beforehand that you cannot be a Cleveland Browns fan because that is self-abuse, then you know what? It's fair game. It's in bounds. It's completely in bounds.
Yeah, it is. All right. Rick, good stuff, man. That was fun. I appreciate you calling. And again, sit tight. Elijah's going to hook you up with a pair of tickets to Saturday afternoon's game. It's a 4 o'clock game over at the Ray. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Cato's Power Equipment has become my go-to when it comes to getting things around the yard done even better. All right. Last year, my Toro Time Master 30-inch deck mower, absolutely love it. Again, efficiency is key. I don't mind doing yard work. There are days when I like it, but there are also the times when I just want to get it over with so I can go do other stuff. This year, added a Toro, fantastic new Toro blower and pole saw. The pole saw, even like my wife was excited because she's been wanting some of these things to get cut. They're battery powered, at least the blower and the pole saw, and they use the exact same battery. Great for the homeowner who wants to get it done well with big power equipment and not all the hassles of some of the gas powered engines. Great stuff. The showroom completely remodeled. The staff, experts in everything they do. 4012 West Beltline Boulevard. Stop by and see my good friends at Cato's Power Equipment. All right. Well, we're talking about saving Rick's man card, which we did. It's still valid.
Ruled.
I don't
Yes.
even no expiration date on that. He's in good shape.
Oh yeah.
But thank you, Rick, for for trusting us. And in all seriousness, hope you getting better, man.
We're pulling for you.
Yeah.
Told Rick we're his because he was telling us, well, tell me, off air, how much he enjoys, listening to the show. And I said, well, we're pulling for you, man. We're as big as fans of you as you are of the Los Angeles Chargers because the fandom is valid and legal.
There you go.
We've established that.
Beat cancer. I hate cancer, and hope everybody beats it. No doubt. And I'm glad Rick's going to the game on Saturday. And by the way, later in the program, we have an additional pair to give one of you. 4 o'clock on Saturday. But let's talk a little Carolina baseball. Disappointing night again for the Gamecocks. After what a I don't want to say roller coaster, but kind of. I mean, Carolina took an early lead. North Carolina then retook that lead. South Carolina scored a bunch of runs to tie the ball game at 8, and then in the bottom of the 8th inning, or I guess top of the 8th inning, North Carolina scored 5 runs and ended up winning 13-8. I won't say I did the math other than just going back and looking. And again, what I'm getting ready to tell y'all isn't an end-all, be-all kind of a thing, but it is a concern. In the 10 games against the best teams South Carolina has seen, that being Clemson, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and North Carolina, the Gamecocks are 1-9. And in those games, South Carolina pitching, and some of these are unearned, I'll grant, but that's not good either, especially that Oklahoma game. South Carolina in those 10 games from the 7th inning on, so 7, 8, 9, or the extra inning game against Oklahoma, has given up 33 runs just from the 7th inning onward. And that doesn't count for the fact that in a couple of ball games, South Carolina has been hammered early. The opener against Oklahoma in the first, the opening inning last Saturday, they gave up 8 runs to Arkansas. And, yeah, you were 1 pitch away from getting out of the inning with no run scoring. But you still gave up 8 runs with 2 outs. I mean, there's a lot to be concerned about. And Elijah has the poll question running today. Let's update that real quick, Mr. Campbell, if you don't mind, and then we'll get some results too. I got it right here. Poll question: what's your level of hope for the baseball team? A, long season, still time. B, concerned. C, mashing the panic button. D, checked out. I hate to say that, the biggest, the leader right now is checked out at 37.8%, but it is.
Unfortunate.
29.5% concerned, 24.5% mashing the panic button, 8.3% long season, still time. That's where Rick fell into the category. Look, all of them have some merit. Checked out, I might urge you to not check out quite so early, but I won't discount the fact that you haven't seen anything, at least substantially, in conference play that gives you a lot of hope. I mean, you did beat Oklahoma, and you should have beaten Oklahoma twice. You should have. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's not that I'm discounting how good Oklahoma may or may not be or anything like that, but the Sunday game, South Carolina blew it. You were winning at home in the 9th with 2 outs, and you lost. You did it because of poor play. And then in the 10th, even though they had taken the lead, you had your best hitter up. You had a chance to tie or go ahead, and you didn't. And so anyway, again, last night, even Sunday, you're tied late. You have chances, and both games look like blowouts if all people see is a score. 11-4. It was 4-4 in the 8th. Last night, it was 8-8 in the 8th. And then it wasn't. Last night, South Carolina pitching double-digit walks. Ugh.
It's bad in any game.
Double
and that's
digit walks.
controllable. That's the most frustrating part.
Yeah.
Is that's controllable. Is if you walk double-digit batters against North Carolina, you can easily do it against North Carolina A&T. That's opponent-proof. That's you. Like, it's one thing to pitch to a team that can hit really well, a team like you're going to face this weekend in Tennessee that has nothing but hit the cover off the ball and hit the ball out of the park. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes the better hitting will beat really, like, solid pitching. That happens. That's baseball. But sending that many batters to the base pass without them having to swing the bat is a completely self-inflicted error, and having double-digit of them is a good way to lose any baseball game against any baseball team you play.
Yeah, final number 11 walks, and I don't have this in front of me, but David Cloninger told me this morning there were more than 100 balls that Carolina pitchers threw last. So, look, can it get better? Do pulmonary teams historically improve? Listen, you want a lot of baseball teams to improve. That's part of this sport. This is a marathon sport. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you said, would you rather have a team that starts hot and cools off or the opposite, I'm choosing the opposite. I think back, I'm not trying to make a joke here, but I love the movie Major League. And I love the fact when Lou says to his bench coach, Pepper, 2/3 of the way through the movie, I use it a lot in life, like starting to come together, Pepper, starting to come together. And you'd like for Paul to be able to turn to Monty and Terry and John and go, starting to come together, boys. Well, he won't do it in a Lou Brown. He'll do it in his pulmonary South Florida accent as opposed to wherever Lou Brown was actually from. You hope that's the case. And where can they start to get some timely hits and stop leaving as many men on base? Do some of these pitchers, listen, they don't have I've heard a lot, and I get it. There's not a lot of dudes that throw hard on this staff. That's a thing, but it's not a complete detriment to who you are. And I'm not trying to say they've got a Greg Maddux or a Tom Glavine on this staff.
Or Barry Zito.
They don't. Yeah, a lot of guys. I told you about the great Cleveland closer, Doug Jones. Doug Jones never hit 90. But you got to learn how to pitch.
It becomes more of an art form that way. Pitching becomes more of an art form than just an overpowering science.
And so many guys, now I get it, just want to overpower you. That's fine. Nolan Ryan did his thing, right? J.R. Richard did his thing. Roger Clemens did his thing. Verlander does. Y'all get it. I get it. Power, finesse, a blend.
HGH for Roger Clemens.
But when you don't have it, You've got to find ways to locate. You've got to find ways to change speeds. You've got to find ways to keep guys guessing. And I'm not saying anything they don't know, but it's not happening. And you do it. Well, it is fair to ask: is it going to happen? I don't know. But trying to, I'm air quoting here, work on things this weekend ain't going to work.
Not against this team.
Not with that team.
No.
Because if you think Arkansas is good, chances are pretty solid that Tennessee is even better. And I'm not sure it really matters where they play, home or away.
This could be a Mars
And there's going to be a lot of Tennessee Volunteer fans in those seats. So it's a big mountain for the Gamecocks to climb. More on this throughout the afternoon. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you on this Wednesday. Our buddy Jack Veltri coming up in about a half hour or so, maybe a little bit less than that. Elijah, let's get to a little bit of sound here, if you don't mind. The first cut, 26 on our list here, live radio, from Coach Paul Maneri. Again, South Carolina giving up 5 runs in the 8th inning when the ball game was tied after you had come back to tie the ball game, I might add. But as we said, Gamecocks pitching gives up a lot of late inning runs, and they did so again.
Well, obviously, it was disappointing. You know, we had a great comeback there and tied the game, had the good potential go-ahead run at second base. You know, one more hit, we take the lead, and you know, we'll see if we can hold it. Probably, but I only wanted to use Brandon Stone for the 9th inning today because, you know, he pitched on Friday. Started that game, and you know, we need him obviously for this Friday, you know, whether we start him or use him out of the pen. But you know, if we'd have taken the lead, I probably would have brought him in the 8th inning there and tried to hold the lead with him for 2 innings. But when we didn't, you know, and the game was tied, you know, the plan was to use all these different guys because we were shorthanded with Eskew being hurt, you know, and you know, we were hoping we'd get a bunch of shutout innings for 1 inning from a bunch of different guys. Unfortunately, we only got 3 shutout innings out of 9. And, you know, we come back, fight back, tie the game, and then walk the leadoff hitter on 4 pitches in the 8th inning. And, you know, you just can't do that against good teams.
Yeah, leadoff walks, killers, walks in general. Again, South Carolina pitching issuing 11 walks to the Tar Heels last night. North Carolina also getting 12 hits last night. Carolina scored 8 runs. They also made 2 errors last night. You did a lot of things that you have to improve on. And Paul's not wrong. We've seen, again, this team in several, and I'm not trying to like, well, I am trying to compartmentalize, I suppose, to some degree. But there's a significant line drawn in the 10 games, again, Clemson, Oklahoma, Arkansas, North Carolina, relative to the others. I'm not attempting to discount the others, but you were expected to win those. In those 10 games, I'm not going to say you should be X, but, you know, in a couple of the games with Clemson, you had your opportunities, and then you blew them. You should have, I will say, should have beaten Oklahoma twice. You didn't. And then Sunday and last night, this past Sunday and last night, you had, you know, either tie game or leads late. In those cases, you know, tied in the 8th inning. And not only did you lose, but it just blew up in front of you. So it's not like when we say they're getting beat badly, they are, Elijah, but it's not like one of those things where it's 2 runs here and 3 runs there and 3 runs there and whatever. Next thing you know, it's just gone. You're in it. And then, bang, you're not. And it does feel different. They've got to figure out a way to correct some of those things. Again, even like Paul told you and me on Monday, how much of this is fixed through recruiting? And you don't want to hear that as a fan because you can't fix it right now if it's going to have to be fixed through recruiting.
Well, you got to find a way to stop the snowballing. Like that's kind of the thing, right? You're in these games, you make one mistake in the 7th inning, and that leads to another mistake. Maybe it's on the mound, maybe it's in the field. Maybe those mistakes compound to where, you know, you have an at-bat with 2 runners on, your best player up in the extra innings in a game against Oklahoma that you already let kind of bleed away. And then that compounds into like a hitting mistake that doesn't take advantage of having a couple runners on. To me, the big thing is when you face some adversity late in a game, that one mistake turns into 2, then to 3, then to 4, and you can't stop some of that on-field, you know, bleeding of runs, right? Like there's no Band-Aid for this team right now. And you desperately need a Band-Aid because when you get this close, by the time you get into the 7th and 8th inning, the teams you're playing are good enough to take advantage of every mistake you
Absolutely.
make. How do you put a Band-Aid on what happens in those innings?
I don't know. And is it a Band-Aid or do you need like a whole roll of gauze?
Some Gorilla Glue.
A mummy's worth.
Glue the wound together.
We'll talk some football and baseball, get into a few NFL things too, but more on the Gamecocks with our buddy Jack Veltri coming up in hour number 2. Keep it here. How you watching what you watch? You want to do it better than ever? Do it with Integrated Media then. 803-948-8327. Integrated Media makes house calls. If you have been wanting to get a home theater built from the ground up, or you love a setup that you might have, but you want the best in today's technology, call Integrated Media. Dave will come out to the house, walk around with you, and, you can talk budget, you can talk location, you can talk size of televisions, exactly what you want. Maybe one of those really cool frame TVs. It looks like, you can put like museum quality artwork on it and then just tell people, hey, look, I got a Picasso. And nobody's going to be the wiser until a game comes on. You're like, gotcha. Outdoors, all right? Watching a little baseball or anything else this time of year outside, you can get it done with Integrated Media. Whatever you want in a home theater, 803-948-8327. Integrated Media. Four o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Second hour of the postgame show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios, downtown Columbia, South Carolina. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Our buddy Jack Veltri of Gamecock Central will join us in just a bit. He was at the ball game last night. South Carolina falling in Charlotte to North Carolina, 13-8. Gamecocks led early. Heels took a pretty big lead. Carolina came all the way back to tie the ball game and then promptly gave up 5 runs in the top of the 8th and fell by that final margin. Well, again, a lot of disappointment. We got a poll question running and get to that in just a second. I just saw this. Whit Babcock, the AD of Virginia Tech, who Carolina opens the football season with, was speaking today on a couple of things in Blacksburg. And this isn't anything related to the Carolina game. He says that Virginia Tech expects to make just over $1 million, which doesn't seem like a ton, on the Metallica concert in May. For those of you who didn't hear, Metallica, actually what Metallica's doing is a pretty cool tour. I've seen them twice. I will not be going to any of these shows. I'm just going to let y'all know that in advance. That's nothing against, for you. Nothing against. Well, when I saw them outside, it was fine, man. I saw them at Williams-Brice with Guns N' Roses. That was fine. But I have told the story that seeing them in the old Coliseum was literally painful. And I did. I left. It hurt. It was so bleeping. And I've told you, I had been at that point, I had seen AC/DC in concert. I had seen Van Halen in concert. I had seen ZZ Top in concert. Probably other Kiss in concert. So I had been too loud. And if I can borrow from Spinal Tap with the turning up to 11, if those that I just mentioned were 10, Metallica wasn't an 11, man. It was like a 14.
The way you've described this to me, and just like your recall of this concert, makes my ears hurt.
It hurt. And I love concerts. I don't mind the loudness. I don't. I've been to literally hundreds and hundreds of concerts in my life. I love live music. And places can get loud. I've never been to anything like that. Never been to anything like that. And I saw Robert Plant twice in concert. All kinds of stuff, man. It hurt. David Lee Roth twice. I've seen Kiss like 4 times, and Kiss is loud. AC/DC was loud. Not like this. I don't even know how you could turn. I was like, how do y'all even turn it up any louder? And if I may, and I was like, old dude, I was like 19. I was like, if I may, like, sir, why does it need to be so loud?
Can we turn it down?
It hurt. But anyway, Metallica going to Blacksburg, they got the whole Metallica thing going on. And Whit Babcock today said that the Blacksburg show at Lane Stadium was the fastest selling Metallica show of the tour. They have sold more than 75,000 tickets to that show.
Wow.
When you count the on-field tickets. So that's impressive.
They have on-field tickets, which means there's probably some availability left.
But it's cool. It really is, because, Metallica doesn't have to go play there. They're doing it as a nod to, because that's been a thing up there for
a long
20-something years. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Running out to Metallica. One of the coolest entrances.
It's cool.
In all of college football.
It's cool. But other than that, Metallica's playing NFL parks, and they're doing part of the tour, like, no repeats. So, like, they're doing Fridays and Saturdays where you will not hear the same song twice, which, again, as a jam band guy, I'm used to that. But I understand that for a lot of bands, you kind of have a script that you need to stick to.
Playing the hits.
Yeah. Like the Stones. Like, it's fun to go see the Stones because, like, the Stones will play, they play like the big hits, right? And then there's about 4 songs a night that are different from what you heard the previous night. But of those slots, the Stones probably pull from about, like 15 songs. So they're not like going super deep cut, like, hey, let's play what, they're not, they don't really do that. But if you're going, have fun. You won't see me
Take
this
video
time.
so I can live vicariously through you.
I think they're playing Atlanta or Charlotte, right? One of them, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I haven't seen all the tour dates, but
If you should, if you even remotely like Metallica, and I realize that they're certainly not a niche band, but you do need to like
The
very,
genre.
very heavy metal. But I mean, I'll say it like this: it's a scene, man.
Oh, I can imagine.
You know?
It's very loud. That's my only thing. Sometimes.
But outdoors, seeing it outdoors was very different, and I was glad to go and experience an entire Metallica show. And Guns N' Roses was great too. That was over at Williams-Brice. I forget what year, early '90s. It was fun.
Yeah, Guns N' Roses, from what I've been told now, I had some friends who went to a Guns N' Roses concert back in like 2017, and they hated it.
Yeah.
Axl Rose doesn't sound too good.
Nah. But this was for their, it was the tour for, I can't even remember the name of it now, their double album. After Appetite for Destruction just, tore the roof off the sucker. Haney and I one time, I don't want to say we got into it, Michael Haney, my dear friend and longtime co-host Michael Haney, we were debating the merits of debut albums, and I was singing the praises of Boston, the original Boston album, where every song everybody knows, right? And he was talking about Appetite for Destruction, which also is one where basically, if you are a fan, then everybody knows every song and almost every word. But he kind of took a swipe at Boston, and it might be the time I got most angry with Michael Haney, because he was basically calling it like a bubblegum album, and I yours truly did not care for that.
Oh, you didn't love that.
Did not care for that. He was like, that's just kind of and I was like, stop it. I was like, that album is so amazingly well produced, and every song is a hit. I was like, don't even try to go there. And he eventually didn't accept that it was better, and I wasn't trying to say it was better.
Right.
He was saying it was worse, and I was like, different. 15 years apart ish.
They're different genres of rock.
Yeah. But anyway, so have fun with that. In the meantime, Carolina, Virginia Tech in Atlanta is it August 31st? Does that sound right?
We did have it up here.
Oh, you don't have to look it up. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Oh, we used to have it. I have a little schedule up here. But yeah, it is in August. Labor Day weekend will be.
Yeah. And I will say, for those of you who have yet to do anything in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, downtown Atlanta, GA, get your ticket and go. It's a hell of a venue, man. You're going to love it.
Oh, that place is.
It is.
It's a palace.
It is, man. It's awesome.
Saw Saints Falcons there a couple of years ago.
It's awesome.
And maybe the cheapest concessions in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Now, I don't know if it'll be that way for this game, but the Falcons do it right.
Yes.
On purpose. Mr. Blank is like, we're going to, encourage people to come in, and people will spend more money when, you can get, say, 2 Cokes instead of 1 for the same price, or 2 beers.
I was getting craft beer drafts for $5, man.
I wish it were that way at Braves games, because
it was insane.
It is. It's not. The Braves, some places have draft, obviously, but I was going to a little kiosk that was right by our seat, which was both good and bad, and buying the the pint cans of Terrapin.
Terrapin's awesome.
Obsecutioner, and I think it was expensive.
Yeah, they run a little pricier there.
Yeah, so by the 4th one, I was like, I guess I can't have any more beer.
Yeah, the Falcons are great at blowing it on the field, but they rule it off the field.
Right. They still want you to come and cheer.
And that's a good way of doing it. That's how you keep your fans in the stadium, as many of them that you can still keep around.
Speaking of the NFL, there has been a proposal that will get voted on next week that will recommend making what they call the dynamic kickoff permanent. That was last year's kind of experimental thing. Y'all remember that? The kicker's all by himself, and you got to line up. You got to wait till the ball gets kicked, then you can run. They want to move the touchback to the 35-yard line in the hopes, according to the Associated Press, of generating even more returns. As we have often talked about, any Rule 24 of 32 clubs to vote for it. I told Elijah earlier, this is sort of we want to have it both ways. Basically, I'll just read this. According to the NFL, there were 59 returns of at least 40 yards last season, the most in the league since 2016, and there were 7 touchdown returns. The concussion rate fell 43% from the previous 3 years, and there were the fewest lower extremity strains on kick return plays in 7 years. That being said, there were the same number of concussions on plays. So it does feel like there's sort of, well, hey, we didn't have less concussions, which was the design, which was the point of this.
Yeah.
But we did have a lower concussion rate. And my thing is, like, I get that, and that's good. But if you're encouraging more returns with giant men running full speed at one another, then aren't you ultimately,
opening the door for a more a larger number of concussions?
Yeah. And the number one reason for this was to lower the number of concussions. Now they're going to say again a lowered rate. I get it. But I'm fine. I don't know how you feel. I don't know how those of you as fans feel about this. I've just gotten to a point with football, be it really high school, college, care. I don't need a kickoff. Just put the ball at the 20 or 25 and let's play. I like punt returns. I feel like punt returns for touchdowns are like triples in baseball or like pick sixes. Like that's a fun kind of a thing. But I don't really anticipate the kickoff return. And quite honestly, I think a lot of people are still in the bathroom.
Right, for a lot of those.
You know? I just don't. I get what you're trying to do from an entertainment perspective, but is it really something that your fans are clamoring for? I don't necessarily believe that it is. Maybe they have evidence to suggest otherwise, but I'd be perfectly fine if you told me, hey, you know what? After a touchdown or a field goal, ball's at the 25, and let's go play. I don't care.
My biggest problem is kind of the rationale the NFL is using here, because yes, the rate may be lower, but if you have more returned kickoffs, the rate can stay the same. Mm-hmm. But the number of concussions will ultimately be higher.
Right.
And then what are we doing this for?
Yeah. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think next year we'll see, because this again, there were 8 last year, 8 concussions on kickoff plays. And look, it's football, so I'm not going to say, but this is what you're trying to do, eliminate that. I don't think you're going to if you encourage more kickoff plays, more returns. And they're going to encourage it by discouraging your kicker booming the ball into the end zone, because then they're going to come out to the 35-yard line. And that's basically a free first down. I get it. But where's the trade-off? You can't. I think this is one of those classic cases of you can't have it both ways. Mm-hmm. But the NFL believes it can.
It's only going to prove itself wrong.
Yeah,
it's kind of setting itself up.
I think so.
For failure there.
I think so. Again, punt returns, sure. Pick sixes, again, those are fun football plays. And yes, if your dude returns a kickoff, it is cool. I'm not going to discount
like the Devin Hester opening Super Bowl kickoff touchdown is one of the more exciting plays I've ever watched.
Yeah,
as a football fan.
Well, I remember Carolina Debo returned a kick against NC State and helped Carolina win that game in Charlotte a few years back. And I remember the next week, Elijah coming into this very room and saying, "Hey, that was fun, but you got some things to work on, and now you're going on the road to open conference play at Missouri, and you can't expect Deebo Samuel to return a kickoff for a touchdown every game." And what did he do? He returned a kickoff again for a touchdown.
And they're like, "Joke's on you, buddy."
Yeah, but then he didn't do it again that year. But nevertheless,
it was really funny. Touchdown play again.
It was really funny. That was good. Anyway, all right. Jack Veltri on the other side. We'll get Jack's take on baseball, a little spring football too. You are listening to the Postgame Show. 19 minutes after 4 o'clock here on a Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back in. It's the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. Top of the 5 o'clock hour, headlines of the day. More on Gamecock football, drive around the SEC, all still to come. And later in the program, one more opportunity to win a pair of tickets to see the Gamecock baseball team take on Tennessee. Number 1 team in the country coming to town this weekend. We'll have Saturday tickets to give you. Game 2. Speaking of baseball and football, we welcome back onto the program our good friend Jack Veltri on the beat for Gamecock Central. He was in Charlotte last night covering this one. And, Jack, always good to have you, sir. Thank you. This is a rather familiar tale. I read your report on this last night, amongst others, and it's becoming kind of the same old. Gamecocks are in it until they're not late. And the number I came up with in the 10 games combined against Clemson, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and North Carolina, South Carolina pitching/defense has surrendered 33 runs from the 7th inning on. Something's got to give at some point, right?
Yeah, look, thanks for having me on, guys. But, yeah, look, the late innings have been, quite frankly, pitiful lately. And I think, being at Arkansas and then being at the game last night in Charlotte, I couldn't help but notice just how similar the last 2 games have been, where in the 8th inning, South Carolina has fought back to tie the game. And, on Sunday at Arkansas, they give up 7 runs in the bottom of the 8th to go on to lose 11-4. And then coincidentally last night, same thing happens where in the top of the 8th, right after literally 7 minutes, I think I checked, after Bo Hollins tied the game with an RBI double into left field in the 7th, top of the 8th, Zach Russell gives up a 2-run homer to Luke Stevenson, and UNC puts on 5 runs in the 8th to go on to win 13-8. So, yeah, I mean, look, the late inning pitching has been really brutal lately, but overall, pitching in general for South Carolina over the last 4 games especially have just been not good. I mean, you've given up 48 runs, 12 home runs. Your strikeouts are all right, but also you're walking way too many batters. I mean, I think last night, I read they threw maybe 108 balls and only had a 53% strike rate. So that's just not going to cut it, and it's got to be better.
Yeah, that is a pretty damning stat right there. And I think one of the pitchers that has really struggled mightily after those first 2 series has been Matthew Becker. I know those first 2 starts were incredible. Trying to find a role for him right now has been pretty tough. But when you watch him pitch, he had another disappointing outing last night. But what do you kind of see with him as something that may be the most correctable thing for him to fix? Because when he's at his best, I still believe he can maybe help this team.
I think he's just got to get back to, he doesn't throw awfully hard. He sits around 90, 91 at his high, but a guy that throws his fastball typically in the upper 80s, low 90s, that is something that, he's got to rely more on his off speed. His bread and butter seems to be that breaking ball he throws for strikes. It's just, it was hard to hit in the fall and the preseason. It was in his first 2 starts, and then ever since that Clemson series, that game on Friday out in Clemson, just a very rough game for him where the walks were super high, and that's kind of been the MO for him the last few games here that he's pitched in. The command just has not been there, and I think that probably is the most correctable thing, because that's something that Terry Rooney, pitching coach for South Carolina, he's done a great job working with guys over the time that he's been in South Carolina for less than full calendar year now. I do expect Matthew to find some sort of role and pitch better eventually, but right now it's tough because you're also throwing him in a lot of spots where you're either already got runners on base and you're trailing, or like he came into a clean inning against Oklahoma and just could not command the zone. So command's probably the number one thing that he's got to be able to fix here.
Jack, this weekend, it does not get any easier. In fact, as I told Elijah in the audience a little earlier, you could technically say it gets even harder because the best team in America, at least at this point in the season, is coming to town. This is an opinion question, and I know you don't have a hard answer on it, but for the sake of the discussion, where might the number 1 spot be for South Carolina to show some immediate improvement? Is there something with offense? Is it lowering the walks? What kind of chatter are you hearing about where they know if they just one little hair thin type of thing begins to make a difference for them?
Well, I don't even know if you can really boil it down to one thing specifically, Jay, because there's so many issues going on right now. And if it were only one thing, I don't think this team would be struggling as bad as they have. But really what I think it does come down to, because you did have any silver lining to last night was the fact that the offense did show some fight and came back to tie the game. So they're fully capable of hitting. We know that. They're fully capable of playing good defense. We also know that. The pitching, though, they got to get better. It's plain and simple. Your bullpen arms have got to pitch better. I mean, you threw 12 guys last night, and most of them went about an inning. You know, there were only, I think, 3 innings last night where South Carolina didn't allow a run. That is not good by any stretch. Quite frankly, it's terrible. So you got to be able to pitch better. And against a Tennessee offense that is, look, they may play at a small ballpark, but they crush the ball. I'm very, very worried that no matter what South Carolina does offensively or in the field on defense, I really do fear for, seeing what this pitching is going to do against this Tennessee offense.
Yeah, it's certainly a scary thought, and especially if we see kind of a similar script with what we've seen in a lot of these games late, like keeping it close, maybe a tie game in the 7th or 8th inning, and then kind of an unraveling after that. And that's kind of where I wanted to lead you to, here now, Jack. I mean, you're there, you're at these games, you kind of get to play body language interpreter as good as anybody. But when you see a lot of these kind of collapses late in games, like we've seen maybe in the Oklahoma game in the 3rd game of that series, what we saw in the last game of the Arkansas series, like we even saw after the rally last night to get it tied, what may be kind of the feel that you get that this team goes through mentally that doesn't allow them to necessarily stop the bleeding as it happens in real time?
I don't know what it is, because it's like, they like I said, when Hollins got that hit to tie the game, I'm thinking like, all right, South Carolina is going to come back, win this game. They may not get another run here in the bottom of the 7th, but they still got 2 more innings to take the lead. And they were in full command, momentum-wise. And then as soon as Russell came in and gave up the 2-run homer, it's like the balloon just popped, right? Like all the air came out, and that was that. Like South Carolina did not do much after that. And it just felt like they were done. They were defeated. Like as soon as something bad happens in the game, especially in the late innings, it kind of just felt like they rolled over a little bit. Now, to their credit, a few innings earlier, they fought back from an 8-3 deficit to tie the game. So I just think the amount of times that we see this team come back and then the comeback falls short and then something happens to further put them behind, it's mentally taxing, I'm sure. And for the players that are trying their best to win games, it's got to be a terrible feeling to know that you came so close to winning, and then in a matter of seconds, it's like, oh, you're right back to square one.
Talking to Jack Beltry at Gamecock Central, Carolina, Tennessee this weekend. I know Coach Maneri has an availability tomorrow, so I suppose that's when we'll hear something more definitive, Jack. But have you heard anything at all about Dylan Eskew for the weekend?
Well, I think the latest that we've gotten is basically, concussions are very, the timetable can always just be so strange with those. And Maneri is hopeful that he'll be able to come back this weekend. And again, it was such a freak incident what happened out at Arkansas over the weekend with him getting hit in the head by a home run ball during batting practice. I mean, what are the odds of that? But, obviously he was in concussion protocol over the weekend, and we'll find out more definitively tomorrow what his status will be for the weekend. But, like Maneri said, he is hopeful, and I do think there's probably a chance he would pitch this weekend. But, again, we will have to see, and we'll have a better answer of that tomorrow.
And a follow-up to that, has Jarvis Evans, whether it was by default this weekend or not, you think kind of made his case to be a weekend guy no matter what moving forward?
Oh, yeah. At this point, I think he's definitively a weekend guy moving forward. I just don't see them moving him back to the midweek starting spot, considering just how much better he's pitched than most of the guys on staff right now. Look, he only went 3 innings the other day, but, numbers can be a little bit deceiving considering the fact that Arkansas fouled off so many pitches. Yeah. And, I mean, he threw, I think, 40 pitches in the 3rd inning. So, look, he pitched well, all things considered, on short rest and in a pinch when South Carolina needed him to go when Eskew was down. So, I think Jarvis has fully solidified himself as a weekend guy moving forward. And, honestly, I will say this. Pulmonary did not sound definitive on having Brandon Stone in the rotation this weekend. He said he could either start or be in the bullpen, so we'll have to see, but I think Evans is definitely solidified moving forward.
Jack's going to hang out with us, talk a little spring football on the other side. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union ready to help you and your family out with any and all of your banking needs, and they want you to keep more of your money in your wallet, pocket, account. Your choice, right? Whether it's checking, savings, credit cards, car loans, student loans, home loans, equity lines of credit, really money for almost any reason, borrowing for any reason. Palmetto Citizens can get it done for you. They've been in business here in the Midlands for nearly 90 years. That's 90 years. So they know what's up. They know you. They know your community. They don't loan money out of state, even out of the area. Their branches are all here local with good local folks. My wife and I have been members for a while. I was super impressed the first time we went in. I can still remember telling my wife coming out like, wow, that was just a whole lot better and easier than I ever imagined it was going to be. And we've been happy ever since. Check them out online. Learn more. PalmettoCitizens.org. Great people at Palmetto Citizens.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you, they're causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on I-20 eastbound before 26 and exit 64, one on 26 westbound at I-126 and exit 108A, Oakcrest Road near North Trenham Road, Shop Road near Abbott Road, and lastly, an accident's causing some backup on Veterans Road near Britton Lane.
Been talking some Carolina baseball. Time to talk a little spring football. Our good friend Jack Veltri on the beat with Gamecock Central. And, of course, part of what we do here virtually every day. Hanging out with us again for another segment. Always appreciate Jack's time. Let's go to Shane Beamer's ball club. Yesterday, Elijah and I listening to a few of the things that Mike Shula was discussing about this offense and, just working to have more designed opportunities for Lenora Sellers to be a runner relative to when things break down and things like that. But one of the things he mentioned, Jack, was, where they did things well and what they could do to improve in terms of play calling and schematics. And I asked Elijah somewhat rhetorically, like, what are those things? I'm just curious from your perspective or what you're hearing, where do they think last year offensively they didn't do well enough, A, and then sort of B and C, how much of that was talent and development and how much of that was scheme? What are you hearing about those kind of things as this offense evolves?
Well, I think first and foremost, they ran the football pretty effectively that last year. That was abundantly clear. You look at the numbers, they were, dead last in the SEC and rushing 2 seasons ago. And last year they were a lot better with Rocket Sanders and obviously Lenora Sellers under center with the runner he is. But I think the one area, and hearing the players talk about it a little bit today in media availability, obviously wide receivers. They didn't have a number one receiver last year. And not that Sellers didn't have his good passing games at times, but we saw in the Clemson game, right? There were a lot of times where receivers weren't getting open and, had trouble creating separation and, Sellers had to take off and run. That's why we see him run on 3rd and 16 for that touchdown to give South Carolina the win. And there were a lot of moments like that last year. So I think that is probably priority number one of figuring out how to get the receivers the ball more frequently. Does it come down to just creating more separation? Is it talent? I think it's going to help, though, having a full year of Nick Harbor now that he's going through spring ball and he did winter workouts and stuff. A full season focused solely on football is going to probably do a lot for him. And then how's Jared Brown going to step up, too, and along with these other guys, and what kind of impact do the freshmen make? So I think getting the ball to these receivers more and taking a little bit of pressure off of Sellers having to run so frequently, even though we know he can do it and will still do it this year, it'll probably help develop his game into a true dual threat a little bit more than he already is.
I want to take that, kind of over to where you mentioned with some of the receivers, the freshmen specifically. I mean, this was a class that was very wide receiver heavy coming out of the high school ranks. And I know that this coaching staff is excited about a lot of them. And I know some of them have definitely been turning some heads here in the early days of spring practice. But what maybe are you hearing about some of those freshman wide receivers that can possibly make an impact maybe a little sooner than expected, kind of in a way that Mazio Bennett did last year?
Yeah, look, Mazio was, a league of his own last year as one of the top freshman receivers on this team, one of the only ones that really made a substantial impact last year. And they got a lot of guys this year that could go out there and do something really good this year for the team. That's particularly why I think they don't necessarily need to go out, and it doesn't hurt to look, but I don't think they need to go out and necessarily go into the portal in a few weeks here and find another guy, unless they're wanting to bring in another vet or something. But you look at guys like Mike Furry mentioned yesterday, Brian Rowe has a 40 to 41 inch vertical. Lex Cyrus, set the school record for a vertical, and he hasn't even stepped on the field yet. So those were two guys that he mentioned as guys that, he's very high on. And then there's a lot of talent on this team. And I think other guys that we could look at, Malik Clark is one that I'm very interested to see how he kind of shapes out his role. And I think we also can't rule out the possibility of what does a guy like Donovan Murph do when he officially sets foot on campus, gets going on with practice and stuff in the summer and into the fall camp. I think they got a lot of talent at the receiver position, but those are obviously the guys that have been mentioned in press conferences and whatnot.
I have a 41-inch vertical if you double my vertical.
I have a 41-inch vertical on a trampoline.
Yeah. It's, let's not call that anything special. Again, just double what I have, and it's a 41. It's that easy. Jack Veltri with us here talking spring football. Let's go to the defensive side of things. You're going to lose a first-round pick in Nick Emenwari. You lose a lot of guys up front at the D tackle spot, but they have really built, Jack, a lot of quality depth. Is there a level of concern, or is this just more about plug and play when it comes to the spring right now?
I think right now, plug and play. I think I'll start with the defensive line. I don't think it would hurt. I mentioned not really needing to go into the portal to go get a receiver. That's just my thought process on it, and I don't think they really need to, considering they didn't do it in the winter here. With defensive line, I don't think it would hurt to go back into the portal and go look for another guy, just because we've heard a lot of good things about Nick Barrett stepping in as one of the vets on this defensive line, and he has some other guys like Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy and others along those lines, Xavier Hardy, we've heard a lot about. But do you have the guys that are capable of fully replacing the guys that you lost? I'm not sure yet. So I do think they're going to have to probably go into the portal, go get another guy if there's someone out there. And then with the secondary, there are a lot of opportunities for guys to step up where I don't think the secondary was like the main position where you took the most hits of losing guys. In fact, I think it was probably one of the spots where you retained a lot of guys outside of Nicky Emenwari and O'Donnell Fortune, which those are big losses, no doubt. But Jalen Kilgore is obviously the main guy. We'll see if he is, I think he's going to remain at nickel this year. That seems to be what Torian Gray and he like. And then obviously you have other guys, DQ Smith out there at safety, who's going to fill Nicky Emenwari's shoes and who's going to fill OD Fortune's shoes. They got the guys, and I think they are definitely going to have some guys really prove it this spring and into the fall.
And then, with specialists too. I mean, a whole new specialist group between kicker, punter, return men. Like it's a pretty new group in terms of your specialists. How much intrigue do you have with seeing kind of really who shines this spring and maybe takes the bull by the horns with some of those positions?
I am wondering how the kicker position specifically is going to shake out. I do think with punter, I just feel like Mason Love is probably your guy at that spot. It just makes the most sense since he was already here last year. He got to work up and close with Kai Kroger, and it makes all the sense in the world there. We know kicker last year in the summer into the fall, that was a competition that, I remember Shane Beamer not talking about with the most pride in the world, that it was a little bit rough at times. And you're hoping that someone can kind of, like you said, take a grasp of it and run with it. But do they have that guy? Are they going to be able to go out there and feel good about Peyton Argent or William Joyce or maybe even Love kicking in a huge spot, or Max Kelly kicking in a big spot when you need a field goal to tie or win the game? You were in a lot of those spots last year, and you went 0 for 3. So I'm wondering if they're going to be better than what a guy like Alex Herrera was last year, who in his own right was decent at best.
That's a good point. And I imagine Shane's really kind of chomping at the bit to create some special teams competition for those guys. So that could be a lot of fun. Jack, appreciate the extra time. Great work as always, sir. Jack will be back on the airwaves in the morning, and we'll talk to him again very, very soon. Jack T. Veltri on Twitter, if you're not already following. Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And, of course, GamecockCentral.com. You are listening to the Postgame Show. AAA Heating and Air ready to keep you nice and cool here as we get into the warm months across the Midlands of South Carolina. And those days are basically upon us right now. Is your air conditioning system ready to keep you cool? When's the last time you had it inspected? Has it been a while? Do you even know how old your system is? Does your system cost you too much money? Do you want something more efficient and reliable? Any of those boxes need to be checked? 803-677-1500 is the number for AAA Heating and Air. Roy and Dana Finley ready to help you out. Listen, quick repair, then you're good to go with true transparency pricing. Everything good? Hey, thumbs up. All right. Then all you had to pay for was an inspection. I know you're going to be nice and comfortable. Ready for something brand new? Guaranteed financing, $1,500 rebate, 15-year parts and labor guarantee, and the best in the business when it comes to the folks that get it done for you. 803-677-1500. That's my good friends at AAA Heating and Air. Tell them we sent you. Ten minutes in front of 5 o'clock here on a Wednesday afternoon. Jay and Elijah with you. Thanks again to Jack Veltri for giving us a little bit of extra time. Coming up next hour, headlines of the day. Jack mentioned some of the assistant coaches that have been speaking around Carolina football. We'll have some of that for you. And a drive around the SEC. Big East fans are blank about having two Patinos in their conference now, Elijah Campbell. If you haven't heard, I know you have, sir, but for those of you listening, Richard Pitino, Rick's son, who's been very good at both Minnesota and New Mexico, will become the new head coach at Xavier. What do you think?
Will.
So fans are blank about two Patinos.
Should be excited.
Okay.
I would even say thrilled, because that's must-watch TV. I don't know if you've seen any of the documentary series that Vice has done on St. John's,
I have
the team
not.
this year. I've seen clips. I've not seen full episodes. I might dig into that tonight a little bit. But someone clipped a scene from when New Mexico played St. John's earlier this year, and it was a scene where Rick and his son Richard are at this bar, and they're talking about the game tomorrow. And Richard looks at him and goes, "So who you got in the starting five tomorrow?" And Rick goes, "That Kadari Richmond's hurt. He's not going to play." And Richard goes, "I don't believe that." He goes, "No, I mean, he's hurt. I mean, he might be a go. We're really, we're monitoring that pretty closely." And then they flash forward to the next day, where they're announcing the starting lineup at MSG, and they announce Kadari Richmond's name as a starter in that game. So, like, blatantly lying to him about who's starting. Like, the gamesmanship between two of them, even as father and son, was hilarious. And now we get that twice a year. Like, that's must-watch TV. That's going to be a highly rated game on Fox next year.
Yeah.
Probably going to be put not just on FS1. That's probably going to be the Fox game for both whenever Xavier and St. John's played, either Cincinnati or New York. That's great for the sport. The
I
Big
like
East
it.
has
I think
always
it's
thrived on
fantastic. I think it's fantastic. And so there were a lot of folks who thought that Richard Pitino was one of the leading and I think he was one of the leading candidates for the Villanova job, which remains open. And I think that has now shown an even larger spotlight, brighter spotlight on Kevin Willard at Maryland as the potential new coach at Villanova. And Willard's been making cryptic comments. He's got the Terps in the Sweet 16. I think, with the way Connecticut played against Florida, hell, the way South Carolina played against Florida, you can find a way to beat Florida. And Maryland's good. I don't expect them to win this game, to be honest. Now, I will say I had Connecticut versus Maryland because I had Connecticut winning that game on my bracket. And they almost did. But
they scared the hell out of Florida.
But almost doesn't count.
Unless it's horseshoes.
But if it's not, let's say Willard stays at Maryland, which, look, is the Nova job better than the Maryland job? I think you could make a case for both. I mean, Maryland is Big State U in the Big Ten, and it is a basketball school.
They care a lot.
They do. But Villanova, they have a football team, but they play, FCS football? And, look, Jay Wright won 2 titles, and Villanova has 3 titles in their history. That's a basketball school. It's a great job in a great basketball city. But D.C. is a great basketball city. Anyway, if it's not Willard, who does Nova go get? Because I still, with all due respect to the Xavier job, which is a great job, the Nova job has in a lot of ways become, if not the premier job in the Big East, that might be Connecticut still.
Yeah. I think so.
It's probably number 2. It's Villanova.
In terms of Big East schools that don't play football, or like FBS football.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, too. In terms of the revenue share, Villanova can allocate like $7 to $10 million in revenue share before NIL. And that's a school that already had a really strong NIL collective for their men's basketball program.
Right.
You could really argue in terms of the resources needed to build a roster that you might have a better job doing that at Villanova than you do Maryland.
And I wonder if Villanova really, look, I like what Willard's doing at UMD, but is he your guy? I guess my point being, can you not go even better? I don't know who that is necessarily.
Yeah, in terms of coaches that you could maybe reach out to, you wouldn't want Chris Mack, I guess, for that job.
I don't think so.
Mack won in the Big East, but he never won at the level that's going to be expected for Villanova, right? They expect to compete and win Big East titles. Willard is definitely the name that I think they've gone all in on. And then you heard a lot of reports where Richard Pitino was interested in Villanova, and there were talks. Him taking the Xavier job tells me Villanova's coach is still coaching.
Yeah, I think so too. Speaking of basketball in Philly, Fran McCaffrey will be heading back to his alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania in Philly. I hope they like yelling.
Gonna get loud in the Palestra.
Hour 3 coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways. One over at Hampton Street near Williams Street at Jarvis Clapman. Another one has been reported on I-20 eastbound before I-26 near exit 64. One on Richland Street at Marion Street. And lastly, we have an accident reported in the last 30 minutes or so over at Sumter Street at Hampton Street, causing some minor traffic backup.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us this afternoon. We start with South Carolina baseball. Gamecocks and the 21st ranked North Carolina Tar Heels last night at Truist Field in downtown Charlotte. Gamecocks took an early lead. North Carolina came all the way back for a 5-run lead. Gamecocks tied it in the bottom of the 7th, went into the 8th at 8-8, and then the Gamecocks promptly gave up 5 runs and lose the ball game by a count of 13 to 8. In the 10 games against the highest levels of competition the Gamecocks have seen so far this season. That is the 3-game series with Clemson, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, plus the game last night against the Heels. South Carolina pitching/defense has given up 33 runs from the 7th inning onward.
Is that bad?
It is certainly not good, sir. It is certainly not good, and it is a real theme for this ball club. They have had multiple games where they have blown it, and that doesn't include the fact that in Game 1 against Oklahoma or Game 2 against Arkansas, South Carolina just really didn't have it to begin with in those games. And in the Game 1 loss to Arkansas earlier this past weekend, South Carolina gave up 5 runs in the 7th, and that got them run ruled. So it's just been a real struggle, especially late for South Carolina pitching. There's really no other way to say it. And Coach Maneri last night in his postgame was talking a lot about his pitching staff and what they need to start doing.
No. The plan was what it was. The only deviation we made was to bring Susie out once we knew there were going to be 4 left-handed hitters in a row the next inning. And I'm trying to remember, is that the inning he gave up the home run, or he gave up the home run in the first inning?
He gave up 2. So
he gave up 2. Yeah, it's so long ago I can't even remember. But that was the only deviation away from the plan, was just knowing that there were 4 left-handed hitters in a row, and we thought Susie gave us a good chance there. But, but as far as using other guys, no, the plan was 1 inning each and, hand it to the next guy. But, some guys did a good job. I thought Sweeney really threw the ball well tonight. He looked like his old self. I was proud of Caleb Jones. He's been waiting his turn. He came in and gave us a shutout inning. Palmer gave us a shutout inning in the 9th. It was a little too late though, but we just got to keep working hard. But 11 walks, 2 hit batters. I mean, you're just not going to beat teams when you do that. It's hard enough, when you give up hits and some home runs, but when you give 13 free passes, it's just too much to overcome.
Can this ball club begin to improve upon those things? The easy answer is yes, they can. Will they? And are you ready to start doing it against the literal, at least for now, best team in the country? The number 1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers come into town this weekend. Coach Maneri says there's still a chance to get better, but you got to do it pretty quickly.
I didn't want to really evaluate that, or talk about that. Obviously there's some things that we need to improve upon, and but hey, listen, we're gonna continue working with the guys, and I mean, there's some things that are fixable. It's not a matter of talent, being able to come in and just come out of the bullpen and throw strikes right away. I mean, some guys do it. Other guys have the ability to do it. When they don't do it, it's something that we've got to improve upon. But, yeah, I'm not at the point right now where publicly I'm going to talk about, all the areas we need to improve in, because these are the guys we have, and we're going to work as hard as we can with them.
That's the thing, as we said, and that this isn't a knock. Again, Paul was with Elijah and me on Monday and made mention on his own. Some of the things that he knows are troubling this ball club will ultimately be fixed through recruiting. And that's perfectly fine. This is college sports, after all. But for now, you got to dance with who brung you. And that begins to, I think, for a lot of fans, Elijah, be troubling, because this team doesn't seem to have too much of an issue with getting runners on base. It's bringing them home. We talked a lot last week and this week about the slugging percentage or lack thereof. You and I and Alan Cole talked about that last week. We had Derek Scott on yesterday's program. He mentioned the same thing. It's the slugging numbers. You're not hitting enough doubles. You got one last night from Bo Hollins, and it made a big difference. You got to have more. You got to find ways to do that. But to me, as Paul said in the earlier cut, 13 free passes against a ranked team. You unless they do that to you, and they didn't.
Right.
You really can't expect to have any notion of winning a ball game. You just can't.
No, that's a kiss of death against a ranked team and against an unranked team.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those things in sports, and it's kind of like, 20-plus turnovers in basketball, 4+ turnovers in football that will get you beat against anybody. It makes you vulnerable to lose no matter who the opponent is. Those are those things that if you can't take care of yourself, good luck winning any game you play. And that's really, to me, the most glaring issue from last night was, like sometimes you might give up 13 runs in a game, especially against a team like North Carolina, especially against teams that you're going to face in the SEC. Teams like Tennessee and Arkansas and Georgia do a good enough job scoring 13 runs on their own. Right?
That's a great point, man.
I mean, it's like, like Jeff Bezos can buy this house on his own. You don't have to just give it to him. Like, he doesn't need you to gift him whatever luxury item you would like to gift him.
Here's a discount, Jeff.
Right, exactly, because you really need it. No, that's when you set yourself up for something worse than disaster, is giving 13 free bases, especially when you get to the point of the season, which we're already at, where you're playing teams who are very capable of getting 13 runs on their own.
And a couple of errors made by the defense last night, too. So, again, more things that are, at least to some degree, within your control. Coach Maneri has another media availability tomorrow, and at that point in time, we should learn the rotation for the weekend and certainly learn more about Dylan Eskew and whether or not he is able to come out of the concussion protocol. Again, to remind you, if you didn't hear over the weekend, on Saturday in a bullpen session ahead of his Sunday scheduled start, during BP, he was literally hit on the head with a home run ball. It's a BP home run. I don't care what kind of home run it was, but a ball hit out of the park into the bullpen and landed squarely on Dylan's head. Fluke, yep. But, and I thought Elijah yesterday, made a good point. It's a Murphy's Law kind of team right now.
Team of the year, front running.
Feels that way. But can't use that as an excuse, especially this early in the season. The good news, you've got 24 conference baseball games left to play and go prove yourself, plus some midweek opportunities. The bad news is in 10 games against the highest quality competition, you're 1-9. And in most of those games, you got beat. Mm-hmm. You didn't just lose the game. The extra inning game to Oklahoma feels like the only one. I guess you had one game against Clemson that was close.
Yeah, and the opportunities that you had to steal some games, you kind of beat yourself in those opportunities as well. That also doesn't do you any favors. Got
to find a way to get a little bit better, but we'll see. Again, more from Coach Maneri tomorrow. Carolina, Tennessee starts on Friday night at 7 o'clock, Sunday at 4 o'clock. Saturday at 4 o'clock. What did I say? Friday at 7 o'clock, Saturday 4 o'clock, and Sunday will be a 5 o'clock first pitch down at Founders Park.
Does anybody really know what time it is?
Does anybody really care? But some of you do, and always a good reference. Later on this hour, we will give you a pair of tickets to Saturday's 4 o'clock game.
You really want to know what time it is then?
4 o'clock.
Answers our question.
That's right. Let's get into some college basketball news as we continue our integrated media headlines of the day. West Virginia has filled its coaching vacancy. Maybe a bit of a surprise. I'm going to ask Elijah Campbell about this, but Ross Hodge, the head coach at North Texas, will be the new head coach at West Virginia, a 5-year deal. He's coaching North Texas through the NIT, and they're going to do that. They've advanced to the semifinals. They'd like to win the NIT again. Hodge was, the new AD, Ren Baker at WVU, hired Hodge back at UNT in the day. So there's a great familiarity. And I suppose, too, in all seriousness, working at UNT, working in that region where the bulk of Big 12 schools are, is a factor in this in terms of maybe recruiting some of the talent. Does this move surprise you at all?
It doesn't really surprise me because I think Ross Hodge has done a fantastic job of carrying the torch that Grant McCasland gave him whenever he left North Texas for Texas Tech. I mean, they plays an exact same style Grant McCasland did. I mean, in the 2 years that he's been the head coach at North Texas, they have finished in the bottom 4 in adjusted tempo. Mm-hmm. They play really slow. That's kind of a recipe for success that the Mean Green have found over the course of the last 5 or 6 years with both McCasland and Hodge as head coach. The North Texas program has been proven to crank out some decent, D1 coaches. I mean, outside of Tony Benford, the last 4 head coaches for North Texas end up getting poached by bigger schools, the other one being Johnny Jones, who went to LSU for a little bit. Yep. But that's a good basketball program. He's also, has a great relationship with Grant McCasland, who, again, with him being at Texas Tech, is in the same conference. So you have a little bit of intel on another coach that is dominating the league right now, or at least going to be consistently as long as McCasland's there. I think Texas Tech is going to be a top 4 or 5 team in the Big 12. It's just probably going to vary depending on the year. But I think it's a solid hire. It might not be the sexiest name, but West Virginia isn't the sexiest job.
Right.
So I think they got an appropriate coach to fill that vacancy.
Right. That's fair. And again, if you missed it earlier, we were talking about it, but Richard Pitino, Rick's son, is going to be the new head coach at Xavier. So 2 Patinos in the Big East. He led the New Mexico Lobos to the NCAA tournament each of the last 2 years, won more than 50 games in that span. He also, as Minnesota's head coach, took the Gophers to a couple of NCAA tournament appearances during his time in the Twin Cities.
And lost to Middle Tennessee State in one of them.
Yeah.
Something him and Tom Izzo have in common.
How about that?
Yeah. So they're grouped. Victimized by the Blue Raiders, baby.
There you go.
His lasting memory at Minnesota getting bounced by 12 TSU.
There was word that Chris Mack down at Charleston, who had been Xavier's coach back in the day, was on the list. I think he probably was. And again, this leaves Villanova still open in the Big East. So again, I would argue the second best job in the Big East is Villanova.
Yeah,
because Connecticut's number 1.
Yeah, especially.
I mean, you can rotate some of these things.
Well, because UConn is a coach-proof program.
It's a powerhouse.
I mean, they've won. They kind of like LSU football. They've won at least 3 different national titles since the turn of the century with at least 3 different coaches.
Right. It is impressive. No, I agree. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, they've become a thing. Yeah, just steer the boat.
A self-driving wagon.
Just don't veer us into the rocky shoals.
Just miss that iceberg right there, sir.
That's
just
right.
miss that one giant iceberg, and this ship is unsinkable.
And finally, real quick, in our integrated media headlines of the day, Russell Wilson has agreed to a 1-year deal with the New York Giants. It will include $10.5 million guaranteed and could be worth double that. That's right, $10.5 million in incentives. I sometimes don't know how, maybe because his time in Denver wasn't very good, but Russell Wilson has been to the Pro Bowl 10 times. Now, that doesn't mean he's been an All-Pro 10 times.
Important distinction.
It is. But he has been to the Pro Bowl 10 times. He had been talking with Cleveland and potentially staying in Pittsburgh. So now the Steelers, this becomes the story now. The Pittsburgh Steelers need a number one quarterback. Mason Rudolph is not that guy. And Terry Bradshaw ain't walking through that door.
And if he did, you don't want him suiting up.
And Ben Roethlisberger ain't walking through that door.
And if you did, you probably don't want him suiting up either.
So will they draft somebody? Will they trade for somebody? Will they hope that Mason Rudolph really can be that guy? Mason's a solid kid, but he's not going to be what Pittsburgh wants in a long-term answer at quarterback.
Yeah, I think you've seen enough on Mason Rudolph to be able to determine what type of quarterback
I think so.
in this league.
I think so.
Large sample size.
I don't know if Russell Wilson makes the Giants any better.
But I don't think he makes them worse.
No.
That's kind of where we're at. With
Yeah,
this
that's just it. I'm not so sure. I'm doing shruggy guy.
Is it possible to remain stagnant with as bad as they are? Maybe.
We'll see. That's our integrated media headlines of the day, 803-948-8327 for all your home theater needs and so much more. Can't do it better than when you can with the guys at Integrated Media. Gamecock spring football notes for you on the other side. Some phone calls and a poll question as well. It's a busy Wednesday postgame show. 20 minutes after 5 o'clock. Yeah, I won't do the DTA, or will I? All right, I won't.
Oh, I think you should.
Welcome back into the program.
This is a radio program. This is a postgame show. We love sports.
Jay and Elijah with you.
The Washington Wizards.
Drive around the SEC still to come.
The Washington Commanders.
I could keep going. By the way, real quick, let me say this. Speaking of Saturday Night Live, I'm not a huge podcast guy. I know there are a gajillion of them out there, and plenty of them are great. But
We basically do a 3-hour one every day.
Well, kind of. But I did see that the amazingly brilliant and funny Amy Poehler has just started a new podcast called A Good Hang with Amy Poehler. And I watched the episode. I think she's done like 3 or 4 of them. But I watched the one with Martin Short, who is one of my comedic heroes. It was awesome. And if you want to laugh, it was great. I saw a little bit of hers with Tina Fey, who I also think should like take over for Lorne Michaels when Lorne finally retires from SNL. I think the job should just go to Tina. There shouldn't even be a search. Just like hand it to Tina.
She's the coach. Dude,
she's just immensely, brilliantly funny. But I love Martin Short. I do. I love Martin Short, and he's so funny. But it was great. So if you want to laugh and have a podcast thing, and you just need a little escape, again, free plug. Don't know Amy.
Gonna put that one in the rotation on the way to Birmingham.
It's fun, man. It's good. It's good. And I think Rashida Jones is on the newest episode. She's also brilliantly funny.
Oh, yeah.
So check those out. But anyway, it's just a little free comedy plug there for you. Again, I get nothing from that. I'd like to meet Amy Poehler. And she and Tina Fey are doing a concert tour. Did you know that?
Really?
Comedy
no,
tour.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
At all?
Not. I think like the closest they're coming here is like either D.C. or Orlando, though, which are both about 500 miles away. So that's kind of far.
Yeah,
but maybe they'll add some dates. Keith wants to talk a little baseball. He's up next on the program. Hey, Keith, good afternoon.
Hey, Jay, how y'all doing this evening?
We're well, sir. Hope you are.
Doing well. You know, I'm going to be the last to question Paul and Coach Tanner. I mean, it's obvious. They're unbelievable baseball coaches. But, you know, the last 12 years, outside of a couple little glimmers of hope, I mean, the talent level, respectfully, is just not there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like it's been a 12-year, I don't know. The reality is you can be optimistic, but I've seen enough sample size it's going to be a rough year. And, you know, I don't know. But maybe Tanner didn't exit early enough, truthfully.
Well, as AD or coach, you mean?
No, best coach I've ever seen.
Yeah.
AD.
Yeah, that's, you know, you raise a bunch of good points, Keith, and thanks as always for your phone call. No, listen, this is college sports, and so you nailed it at the top of your call. This is primarily a talent issue, because Paul Mainieri does know how to coach. Mark Kingston knows how to coach. Chad Holbrook knows how to coach. You know, I will say too, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here. Okay, I didn't like that Chad left, if only because, as all of you know, whether you got mad at him or not for not making the playoffs a couple of years, which is bad, Chad is one of the best recruiters in the country. And there is no doubt in my mind that when Ray pulled Chad from Coach Fox's staff in Chapel Hill and brought him down here, you don't need to do anything else other than look at the facts to see that the difference that was made when Chad got down here and began to fill already talented coffers with even more talent. And what happened? South Carolina played for 3 straight national titles and won 2 of them. You know, so I'm not saying Chad should still be here. That's not necessarily what I mean, other than to say you got to go recruit. Now, you know, a lot of other guys can go recruit too, and Carolina has had some very good players in that span that never did make it to Omaha. You know, you got Petrie right now, and you look at Grayson Griner, who had a hell of a career. I could go on with some more, but they need talent. They do, and Carolina has been passed by so many programs that you would not necessarily back in the day have expected to pass them in baseball. Again, I don't knock Tennessee when I say what I'm going to say, but if you had said to me, hey, name a program that's going to just like run circles around South Carolina in 15 years, going back to when Carolina won its first title, I promise you Tennessee wouldn't have been on the list of like 20 schools.
No.
If you had said Georgia, I'd go, yeah. And Vandy and Florida and LSU were already there. Auburn can have flashes. Bama can have flashes, things like that. At the time, the Texas schools weren't in the league, but there's zero surprise. I mean, South Carolina lost to Texas for a national championship. Texas and Southern California are sort of the historical standard bearers for what college baseball is all about. And so, yeah, Keith, it's frustrating amongst many other words we could use. And here's another fact, I guess you can blend some opinion into this. But, Carolina's baseball facility was once a gym. That's GEM. Now, it's still a wonderful ballpark. Don't get me wrong, okay? But those of you who traveled around the SEC, or when I, talked with Derek about this, or what Tommy would see, what Stewart sees, it's middle of the road.
It's been passed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what can you do? And is that alone going to do it? No. I mean, look, you still got a great training facility underneath there. And, and that was one of the things Ray wanted. He wanted a baseball facility, not just a baseball stadium. And they do still have great things down there. Again, I'm not saying they've been left for dead, but all these things matter. And you start to think like, that ballpark, this is what, season 16, 17 of that ballpark? I mean, it's been around a while now. It's kind of a veteran place. And all these things come into play. But yeah, again, this is college sports. It's a talent issue. And what's going to be done about that, and look, I know last season, the way it ended in the playoffs, you made a change, and it took a little longer perhaps than you wanted it to. You had some names that were interested in this thing, and you got one of the bigger names that was available. There's no doubt about that. But you didn't maybe have a chance to go do anything with it last year in the recruiting cycle or the portal cycle, at least not enough. And so, look, first you got to try to get better this year. And then you need to really hope that there's the kids that are going to come here. And what does Carolina do in a new world with rev share, with NIL for baseball, when trying to take care of Shane Beamer's program, with trying to make sure that Lamont's program gets to where it needs to be and can at least get to the tournament, 50% of the time, which would be a hell of an upgrade over once a decade.
Which you've been to historically.
Yeah. And then let's not bypass Dawn's team in terms of what they will need to remain on top. Dawn's dynamism alone is a fantastic tool for recruiting, but we just saw a young lady yesterday go to Oklahoma, and the reports are that Oklahoma outbid Texas Tech by 7 figures.
Why? It's a wide margin.
Just saying. That might not be the norm, but it's the world you live in now, even in women's basketball.
That's
which
becoming a norm.
Women's basketball, y'all, is exponentially growing, and it will have to factor in if you want to remain on top. So all these things matter, Keith. And again, you make a good point, man. The last dozen years, it's just you've just been one of a handful of pretty good Southeastern Conference baseball teams. You've been to some supers under Chad and Mark. You hadn't been to Omaha. You've hosted a few times under Chad and Mark, but it's not the same world that Ray Tanner built from 2000 to 2012, where you basically hosted almost every year, when you went to Omaha 6 times, when you played for a title 4 times, and you put a bunch of dudes into the bigs, or at least into the pros, and a bunch of them did make it to the bigs. You're not doing that right now.
Mm-mm.
It's just the reality, man. It's a crappy reality for a lot of baseball fans here. Sorry to be a downer. I'll blame Keith.
J. Downer Phillips.
Keith, I know where you're going for you. And Keith, you speak for thousands of people, I assure you. Drive around the SEC and some Gamecock football next.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Hampton Street near William Street. Got a pair of them on Highway 1 at Augusta Road. One's near Pisgah Church Road, the other closer to Kelly Mill Road. Got an accident on 20 eastbound before I-26 near Exit 64, Longtown Road at Clemson Road, Richland Street at Marion Street, and then one on Sumter Street at Hampton Street here downtown.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Wednesday. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. so that I can remind myself and that Elijah can throw something at me, at least, figuratively. We'll give you a chance to win Carolina-Tennessee baseball tickets. After that whole thing we just went through.
How about coming out to the ballpark? Been passed up. But don't pass up your chance to come out to the ballpark and watch some college baseball.
The way you said that reminds me of that scene in League of Their Own. He's like, hey, if you're in the area, and you have to be in the area because this isn't a very powerful radio station, come on out to the ballpark, why don't you? Bring the kiddies.
It kind of had that same feel to it.
Sorry, we're not, it's not, listen, we're, this is laughing through the pain with everybody. This is commiseration here. It's a struggle. It's been tough to watch.
Hey, it would mean a lot to them.
I do think it will get better. I do. I would not have super high hopes for this weekend because Tennessee is just real good.
Every game of theirs is a home run derby, regardless of pitching staff.
And I think regardless of locale, too. Some people do say, well, they play in a bandbox. You know what? When they hit those balls, man, it ain't like they're just clearing the fence.
A lot of them are landing over in the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah. So there's...
Or Smokey the Bear has received, is in a landing zone.
Baseball last night as we start the drive around the SEC. Georgia takes care of West Georgia. Is it Western or West?
West.
Okay.
I believe.
It's all right. We'll figure it out. UWG. 13-6 the final there. Speaking of Tennessee.
West Georgia.
They beat Queens 14-3. Florida State doubles up Florida 8-4. Gators like the Gamecocks, man. Gators right now are struggling. They're 0 for the conference.
Ugh.
You ain't that, at least up here.
And they struggled a little bit last year, too. Yeah. I think maybe some of the shine of Kevin O'Sullivan.
Well, again, you just got a lot of schools that where kids used to just say, well, I'm going to South Carolina. I'm going to Florida. Now they're going to Tennessee and Georgia, too, or Auburn, or FSU. That's the reality, man. That's the real reality of this. Xavier goes to Lexington and beats the Wildcats 9-3. Missouri State. Carolina fans are like, are you serious? Yep, Missouri State in 10. 14-13 winners at Arkansas.
A little bit of a shocker there.
Mississippi State beats Samford 6-1. Oklahoma, no problem with Oral Roberts, 11-2. Oklahoma into the top 10 this week, by the way. Texas A&M, 7-2 winners over Houston Christian. Missouri goes to Illinois, wins 11-9. South Alabama, we picked this one yesterday. South Alabama, no real problems, actually, with Auburn. 13-5. Let's see. Bama loses to North Alabama 4-3. Vandy blanks Eastern Kentucky 10-0. That's just mean.
Blanking them. It sounds like you're almost bleeping out a word you're not supposed to say.
Well, sure, why not? And let's see. Texas beat poor old Sam Houston all by himself 13-3. Ole Miss 7-5 winners over Memphis. And LSU, no problems with Louisiana. That's what they call themselves now, Louisiana. Not just that's U of L. They don't like the Lafayette thing.
Yeah, they've dropped that.
They've tried to, but I think there are some in this conference, and especially maybe the state's flagship school, that they don't like that.
Because they remember them as something else.
You're still Louisiana Lafayette. But anyway, the Tigers beat the Cajuns 17-4. So there's your baseball results from last night. Let's get you into a little bit of what's going on around Gamecock spring football. Coach Mike Furry, Carolina receivers coach, speaking as spring ball is now well underway. And one of the biggest questions for everybody and one of the best surprises for everybody, Nick Harbor committing full-time to football. How's he doing so far, Coach?
I think the biggest thing is maturity, right? And I without getting too much into it, and Nick can speak a lot about it on his own when he talks to you guys. But I think when you look at a Nick Harbor, I think everybody's expectations for Nick exceeded what his expectations were because he was so inexperienced at playing the position. And but when you look at his body size, you would just assume that he would be able to go out there and just dominate every game and every situation. Well, there's a lot that goes on to play wideout. I mean, it's not just running. I mean, you got to run as fast as you can. You got to get in and out of transitions. You got to be able to snap your head around. You got to be able to catch the ball when it's in flight, and you better be able to catch that ball while you're running 100 miles an hour after, at that ball. There's a lot that goes on, and he just hasn't. He hadn't at that time really experienced a lot of that stuff, right? It was all just speculation. And I think now the biggest thing for Nick that we're all excited about, including himself, is he's caught balls in games. He's went and got footballs. We've relied on him on some past stuff last year. And I think towards the end of the season, the touchdown against the Missouri, I think it was, or the ball he caught over the shoulder against Missouri, and then the touchdown coming back against Akron or whatnot, and kind of starting to get in the flow of things. That builds confidence, right? And I think the more and more he becomes confident with himself, the more we'll start exceeding our expectations of what we think of Nick Harbor. And I think the other thing, too, for Nick, I think the best thing about Nick is, I told Nick this the other day, the best thing that ever could happen to Nick is these six freshmen that are coming in. Because they don't, they're going to come in here and just do everything they can and do it right and do it as fast as they can, and he's going to be able to learn from them a little bit too, of how you're supposed to do stuff and see it the right way, and then be able to go out and emulate that also and add that to his game. And so it's kind of hand in hand with him coming back with experience, and then the new guys coming in that are going to be able to push him. And he's had 3 really good days here at spring.
It's really interesting in the sense that, I think, to Mike's point there, and I'm kind of reading between the lines, this is like Nick's first big, real, full spring, It
is.
And so it's kind of new. It's not, because he's got time under his belt, and he did make significant improvement. And as he has told all of us, too, wearing contacts has made a very big difference for me. Imagine that, right? And that's what some people are saying. But, sometimes you just – when you're that young, you're invincible. I don't need any. No, no. And then you went and oh, maybe I do. Oh, wow. Ding. Light went off. But I think it's a big deal. And again, I think Mike's point too is he's going to get pushed a little bit by some of these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a real Shane's not going to play a favorite if somebody's out there doing it. Look, I think I have every reason to believe that Nick and Mazio are going to be 1-2 in some form or fashion. But who else runs into the rotation? So we'll see. One more real quick. Speaking of those freshmen, here's Mike Furry a little bit more on what they've been doing.
Well, I think we recruited every single one of them because of their talent, right? And so, the first thing that always goes is things slow down. They slow down, a lot of thinking going on. And their skill set and their talent kind of doesn't show right away. And a lot of that's just really becoming comfortable, right? And so we've challenged these guys a lot over the last 6 weeks since we really kind of been doing all this stuff of trying to get these guys to understand what their assignments are, understand how to get lined up, or understand how to line up, and then execute and perform the details that we're asking them to do in regards to the routes that we're asking them to run. So, when you look at it collectively, all of them have taken a deep breath over the last 6 weeks. They've all gotten in. They've been, Coach Day does a phenomenal job in our weight program to get guys acclimated because it's rigorous, it's demanding, and it's structured, and it's kind of like playing the game. And so they've all responded very well to that, and that's helped them be ready for spring ball. And what these guys have shown over the first 3 days, I've been very impressed.
Long way to go. 15 total practices, including the spring game. We'll keep you updated, of course, over the next month or so. That's our drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy. Before we hit the break, caller 5, 803-404-6100. Would you like to go see Carolina and the number 1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers on Saturday afternoon? If so, caller 5, hit us up, 803-404-6100. Elijah will hook you up with a pair of tickets. Come back on the other side, poll results, and college football television going to be saying goodbye to one of its biggest names. We'll give you that when the postgame show returns. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the postgame show here on a Wednesday night. David Cloninger is going to be with us tomorrow. Carolina calls tomorrow night. Give you a quick update. We'll be out at the golf tournament for most of the day. I think I'll be back over here by then, and you'll be in Birmingham.
That's the plan.
Yeah. Oh, that made it sound like the one in England, not the one here.
Yeah, when you see Birmingham.
Yeah. We will have the women's game. I think Brad's coming on the air at 4:30.
I believe so.
Does that sound right?
Because it might start a little later if Duke, North Carolina goes a little long.
Brad will be singing Dean Martin tunes if he has to, just stretch it out a little bit. So
I'm sure he's got plenty. I'm sure he's been preparing for this moment.
Tune in for that. It's either that or rugby stories. Although again, Brad's rugby stories aren't as good because he's never lost any teeth.
No.
So it doesn't make him as fun.
But did have, I guess, some broken phalanges.
That's right. All right, you want to do the poll results first and then the final story of the day?
Yes.
You got the poll results pulled? I'll let you do that.
It will not take very long. But our poll question of the day, in relation to maybe how the fan base is feeling about this baseball team right now, what's your level of hope for this Gamecock baseball team? Options: A, long season, still time; B, concerned; C, mashing the panic button; or D, checked out. We have 285 votes, so a pretty large sample size. We'll have this running for the next 18 hours. Right now, checked out at 39%,
Ooh.
concerned at 31%, 23% are mashing that panic button, and only 7% say it's a long season. There's still time to turn this ship around.
Yeah, I like the optimism. I suppose the most appropriate answer for March the 26th is concerned. I can appreciate the pushing of a panic button. I can, because you've just not seen a lot, again, against the highest levels of competition to give you some hope.
And you have a 10-game sample size against
that's
that
pretty good.
competition.
It's a pretty good one, And really the thing is, too, man, I hate to say it this way, maybe the best you could have been in those games is 3-7.
Yeah. If we count the
first game against Clemson was tight. That was a 2-run game. And then the extra inning game. I mean, I know you could say, well, Jay, if this or that, but I'm just saying, kind of based on what I've seen, because you got beat in a couple of them.
And that's the thing too. If ifs were fists, we'd all be drunk, man.
Yeah, there you go.
That's kind of where we're at with some of those losses.
College football will be saying goodbye after the season to a guy I like a lot. I know some people don't, but Gary Danielson is going to retire from his broadcasting career after a heck of a run as an NFL quarterback and a Purdue quarterback. 36 seasons that he's been on television, mostly with CBS, and, of course, for many, many years with Vern and Brad doing the SEC Game of the Week. Now that's CBS Big Ten Game of the Week. But he will be hanging it up, and he will be replaced on college football by Charles Davis, who has been around himself for a long time.
Yeah.
Charles, of course, an all-conference player at Tennessee back in the day, and has been, I guess, with CBS and Fox, right, in his career, and doing some studio work and things like that. But
Titans preseason team.
Charles will be rolling into that one. And if you're wondering, Charles Davis, who's currently part of CBS's number 2 NFL team with the great Iron Eagle, Charles is going to be replaced by J.J. Watt.
Interesting.
Yeah, so J.J. Watt rolling in. I think that's pretty interesting. So I'll miss Gary Danielson. I've gotten to interview Gary a couple of times. He's great to talk with. He and Brad, I think, are just a fantastic team. I'm a huge Brad Nessler fan. I'll tell you that.
Oh, as good as it gets.
Huge Brad, and he's so much fun. In fact, I remember one time talking with Brad at media days, and we were going to talk football, and then all we ended up doing was talking about like him recording with Herbie the video game.
Video game, yeah.
That's all we did, man. It's like 20 minutes of that.
Oh, but that was actually a really fun conversation.
It was awesome. It was. Brad's great. So there you go. So. Again, not done yet. One more season with Gary. Charles rolling in. And J.J. Watt, who is only 36 years old. I think we might get a lot of J.J. Watt moving forward.
I think so, too. He's done a great job in the studio.
Good. He's good at it. I like it. See you all tomorrow.